Hello and good day. I'm Dan, the Rare Coin Man, and I'm here with another video production from rarecoins101.com. It's been a few months since my last video. Unfortunately, I got tied up implementing changes to my website in an effort to please the Google gods in hopes of getting higher search rankings for rarecoins101.com. So, rather than making videos, I spent countless hours and days converting hundreds and hundreds of images to the latest generation format and removing unused JavaScript codes and completed other tasks to speed up load times and hopefully improve overall user experience, all in the effort to get Google to smile upon me better than what they have been. So whether anything I've done will help me remains to be seen. But I'm back down. Another recent event also contributed to a delay in video production, but this event was most certainly a positive experience. A few days ago, my wife and we took a little trip down the mighty Mississippi. Now, some of you old-timers, you know where I'm going with this. Where was our destination? Well, listen to this clue.
In 1814, we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans, and we caught the bloody British in a town in New Orleans.
Yes, sir. It was New Orleans. Yep, we ventured to the Big Easy. We visited a few of the famous places there in the Crescent City, but also made one stop, a little off the beaten path. Let me explain. In 1838, the United States government opened 3 new branch mints. These were the first branch mints ever opened by the U.S. government. One in Dahlonega, Georgia. Another in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the third and the grandest of them all in New Orleans. The old mint in New Orleans still stands today. It's open to the public primarily as a jazz museum, but part of the first floor is dedicated to the building's original purpose, some of which I'll be sharing with you shortly. So, with the New Orleans Mint still fresh in mind, I decided to highlight in this video a very special coin issued from there in 1909, the last year of coinage production from that historic facility. And that coin is the 1909 Barber quarter. Now, I suspect many experienced coin collectors thought I was going to say the 1909 Indian head gold $5 half eagle. Well, that is a fabulous coin indeed, ranking very high on the Rare Coins 101 key date list of recommendations because of its stellar performance appreciation over a period of many years. But we'll save that beauty for another day. The 1909 Barber quarter doesn't have a super duper high profile in the world of coin collecting, but it should. We've done a lot of number crunching here. Well, actually, I should say I've done a lot of number crunching, but I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, so forget what I just said. I'm here to tell you the 1909 quarter has one of the most impressive value trend histories of all the coins we've surveyed, and it's very seriously underrated as far as the data is concerned. And here's another important observation. You don't need to be a billionaire or a millionaire to buy one. Even considering how well it has performed in terms of percentage gains over the long haul, The price tag of the 1909 O quarter still puts it within the affordability range of, I would say, many of us collectors. In this video, I'll explain why the 1909 O Barber quarter is relatively rare and demonstrate for you its incredible value trends. And while we're at it, we'll dig into the history of that old, venerable mint in the Deep South. How about we get started? Before we get to the story of the 1909 O Barber quarter in detail and check out a few value trend charts, let's spend a few minutes exploring the fascinating history of the New Orleans Mint. The introduction of reliable steam-powered paddle boats in the early 1800s helped make New Orleans one of the busiest port cities in the United States. Steamboat traffic on the Mississippi River floated American goods bound for worldwide distribution to New Orleans for access to the high seas. As a port of entry, New Orleans played a major role receiving foreign imports, including gold and silver from Mexico, and was a critical link to the western frontier. By 1830, the Crescent City, as it was called, was one of the largest American cities and a focal point in the nation's economy. The Philadelphia Mint was producing coins at full capacity, but was still not capable of supplying the coinage needed for westward expansion, due in large part to the great distance separating the city of brotherly love from the farthest reaches of the American frontier in the South and West. President Andrew Jackson, the hero of the Battle of New Orleans during the War of 1812, persuaded Congress that establishing a branch mint in New Orleans would increase coinage circulation in the more remote regions of the nation and stimulate economic activity and growth. On March 3, 1835, President Jackson signed into law the act authorizing the construction of the New Orleans Mint. The same act included language to create additional branch mints at Charlotte, North Carolina, and Dahlonega, Georgia, because of gold mining activity nearby. Of these three new mint outposts, it turned out it was the New Orleans facility destined to have the longest, most colorful history. William Strickland, one of the leading architects of his time, was commissioned to draft construction for the New Orleans facility. Strickland already had built an impressive resume as the designer of the Second Bank of the United States and the Second Philadelphia Mint and many other large structures. Additionally, he was appointed as the draftsman for the new Charlotte and Dahlonega mints. Now this is an interesting design drawing by Strickland that depicts the building's front elevation. Strickland's Greek Revival style was clearly evident in the drawings and specifications for the fortress-like structure he provided to the government. It looks like somehow it's taped together, but now this drawing is on paper from the 1830s, so we're lucky we've got anything at all. The 1835 law authorizing the creation of the nation's first three branch mints allocated a sum of $50,000 to cover construction costs for each of the Charlotte and Dahlonega mints. A total of $250,000, 5 times that, was set aside to build the New Orleans Mint. So it was obvious from the outset that Treasury officials intended for the imposing edifice to be one of the most dignified architectural accomplishments in the entire nation upon its completion. The location that was eventually selected for the construction of the Mint in New Orleans is shown here in this painting from 1803. To the left is the Mississippi River. Fort Charles, shown on the right with an American flag, was demolished in 1821, and its former site was selected for the mint's construction. The buildings visible in the background, many of which remain intact, are located within the area now known as the French Quarter of New Orleans. Construction commenced in September 1835. By the time it finished in 1838, the overall length of the building was 282 feet, graced by a columned entrance. The center section was flanked by two L-shaped wings, as shown on this top view here from another one of Strickland's original drawings. Because of its proximity to the Mississippi River, the ground upon which the mint was built was soft and unstable. In this 19th century map here, the mint is centered in the red circle, located maybe 1,000 feet from the river. Unfortunately, the building was chronically plagued by shutdowns and foundation repairs. This partially explains why some of the New Orleans gold coins struck in the 1850s are so incredibly rare and extremely valuable today. In 1837, coining presses and other minting machinery were shipped to New Orleans from the Philadelphia facility. On May 7, 1838, the first New Orleans mint coins were struck, bearing the characteristic O mint mark. A total of 30 dimes were struck on that first day, a total face value of $3. I imagine they had a few bugs to work out, so the first day wasn't so good. By 1851, the mint's production capability finally kicked into high gear, striking more than 10 million in gold and silver coinage that year. Here is a view of the New Orleans Mint from Esplanade Avenue, as pictured in Ballew's Pictorial magazine in 1858. This drawing is considered by many as an iconic, tranquil image of the antebellum South. But that was all about to change. The Louisiana Secession Convention voted on January 26, 1861, in favor of separating from the United States, whereupon the state of Louisiana seized possession of the New Orleans Mint. Before the January 26th vote, 330,000 half dollars bearing the 1861 O date were struck by the hand of the U.S. government. Between January 26th and February 8th, Mint personnel loyal to the rebellious Louisiana produced over 1.24 million of the 1861 O half dollars. On February 8, 1861, Louisiana and 6 other states formed the Confederate States of America. After the birth of the Confederacy, Louisiana turned the New Orleans Mint over to the Southern cause. Minting of the half dollars continued, with another 963,000 struck under the auspices of the Confederacy. In all, over 2.5 million half dollars were minted in New Orleans in 1861, all carrying the O mint mark. Unfortunately for collectors and historians, in most cases, it is impossible to determine precisely which coins were struck by what governmental entity, since all the dies utilized were the same federal design shipped from Philadelphia. Now, I said in most cases, that is, because there are surviving 1861 O half dollars that were obviously struck by heavily worn and crumbling, deteriorating dies. Here is a close-up of one such coin right here. Notice the crack between the 8 and the 6. This crack was caused by the die starting to break apart as it was nearing the end of its serviceable life. An 1861 O half dollar like this one would have been among the last to be produced, making it almost certain it was struck by the Confederates. It was the desire of President Jefferson Davis and other Confederate leaders to strike coins in the name of the Confederacy in hopes of winning international recognition as a sovereign nation. The New Orleans Mint, renamed by its new holders as the Confederate State Mint, was the only place where genuine Southern coinage authorized by the Confederate government was produced. Here is how that happened. On April 2nd, 1861, Confederate Treasury Secretary Christopher Memminger wrote to Mint Superintendent William Elmore. In his letter, Memminger instructed him to see of the persons who deal in engravings or designs, and procure from them for the various coins, and send them here immediately. I would suggest to them to design something new and appropriate to the South, leaving to the North the eagle and its counterpart. Throughout the month of April 1861, Elmore forwarded various design possibilities for Southern coinage to the Confederate government at Montgomery, Alabama, the capital of the Confederacy at that time. The following month, the capital was transferred to Richmond, Virginia. Before full-scale minting of the Confederate coinage could commence, the price of precious metals rose dramatically as the reality of war set in, causing coinage throughout all of America, both North and South, to disappear rapidly. Tangible assets such as precious metal coins were considered a safe harbor in stormy waters. Moreover, bullion supplies at New Orleans were largely exhausted, with no hope of replenishment anytime soon. Given these circumstances, Memminger concluded that proceeding forward with the production of Confederate coinage would be futile, and ordered a suspension of minting operations effective June 1st, 1861. However, sometime in late April, just four Confederate half dollars were struck by Chief Coiner Benjamin F. Taylor. The obverse was made from the Liberty-seated Federal die, like what we've already seen, but the reverse featured a uniquely Confederate design consisting of a coat of arms surrounded by cotton and sugarcane, important symbols of the Southern economy. The striking of the four Confederate half dollars was not widely known, a fact that remained hidden to most until 1879, when the man who struck them, Benjamin F. Taylor, wrote to the War Department in Washington disclosing their existence. The whereabouts of all four genuine Confederate half dollars are known today. The last time one of them sold was in 2017, when this specimen here went to a new owner for $960,000. On April 23rd, 1862, the city of New Orleans fell to a Union naval force commanded by Admiral David Farragut. The Yankees promptly selected the Mint Building as their military headquarters for the duration of the war. After the Civil War and throughout most of the Reconstruction era, the New Orleans Mint Building sat empty. In October 1876, the Mint reopened as an assay office where precious metals were tested for purity. The following year, Treasury officials began to seriously contemplate the feasibility of restoring the facility to full mint status. After making repairs and installing new machinery, the New Orleans Mint resumed coin production in 1879. Of the three Southern mints, it was the only one to reopen following the Civil War. Here are a few photos of mint operations during the post-Civil War years. Here's a look at the mint from the year 1890. Take note, the building is dark with lighter color trim, which is the opposite of what we saw in the image from 1858. This 1897 photograph depicts the stamping room, also known as the coining press room. The Mint has a long-standing tradition of employing women, and numerous images from the 19th century document female staff members at the facility. The attire of the woman in this photograph reflects the standards of professional dress at the time. That press she's operating, there's one just like it in the museum today. Now see the bullion cart in the lower left-hand corner of the photo? One of them is in the museum as well. This is the press that was previously mentioned. The air conditioner vent above is likely a modern addition and may not have been present when the press was used approximately 130 years ago. Here's the cart. It's clear it was past its prime when it was taken out of service. This picture here shows the superintendent of the Mint with his, I guess they call them stenographers back then, sometime around 1903. This photo here is from 1929, taken from the same angle as the 1890 photo. Notice the building is light colored again with a dark trim. Old pictures like this really fascinate me. New Orleans continued to strike gold and silver coins, but as time marched on, it became increasingly clear the O Mint was nearing the end of its life as a coining operation. Newer equipment in the Denver and San Francisco mints dwarfed the productivity of the aging New Orleans facility, raising many questions about its future viability. In 1909, in its 71st year of existence, the New Orleans Mint released the last of its $300 million lifetime coinage production. 2 years later, the historic facility was stripped of much of its machinery and relegated once again to an assay office. The Mint building remained an assay office until 1931, when it was transformed into a federal prison the following year. Perhaps some Washington bureaucrats were impressed by the imposing structure's potential as an incarceration center. The building functioned in this capacity until 1943, when the Coast Guard took over and used it as a receiving station during World War II. For the next 2 decades plus, the building was neglected and fell into a sad state of disrepair, a real eyesore and token image of urban blight, as these photos from 1963 illustrate. In 1966, possession of the building was transferred from the federal government to the state of Louisiana free of charge, with the provision that it be restored within 10 years. Under the direction of the Louisiana State Museum, a number of community groups successfully raised the funds necessary to renovate the old mint, though most of the work occurred beyond the 10-year time frame. In the late 1970s, the building was stripped of multiple layers of paint down to the original surface. The renovation architects decided to apply a new layer of paint having the same color as the first coat of paint that was applied sometime in the 19th century. We don't really know exactly when it was painted the first time. That's why the exterior of the mint doesn't look the same as it did in 1858. I got that tidbit of information from the current director of the museum. In 1981, the Mint was opened to the public as a museum devoted to both the building's original function and the history of the state of Louisiana. Today, the Old New Orleans Mint remains safely registered as a National Historic Landmark. Thousands of visitors from all over the globe are welcomed annually. Though it's promoted primarily as a jazz museum, part of the building's first floor preserves its minting history, showcasing old-time minting equipment like coin presses, weighing machines, assay balances, and of course, coins that were struck within these walls long ago. As I mentioned in the introduction, I toured the Old Mint recently. Here are a few photos from my experience. Something to remember, in the summertime, it's very hot and sticky in New Orleans. Don't say you weren't warned. As we just learned a few minutes ago, during the early years of the 20th century, it became apparent that at some point the New Orleans facility would no longer maintain its status as a U.S. branch mint. The end came on July 1st, 1909, when the federal government cut off funding for coining operations. Never again would coins be struck bearing the New Orleans O mint mark. From the inception of the Barber quarter in 1892 until 1908, production of the 25-cent denomination at New Orleans averaged a respectable 2.86 million pieces annually, with mintage never falling below 1.23 million, as this chart illustrates. With only a 6-month window in 1909, the doomed mint managed to strike only 712,000 quarters before coining presses were shut down. At the far right end of the chart, you can see how small the mintage was in 1909 compared to the previous 17 years. Now, I suppose it's possible morale was pretty low during those months as well, which may have contributed to the small output. The relatively small mintage of 1909 O quarters were released into circulation, where few of them were saved by collectors in those days. This example here of the 1909 O quarter is one of the lucky ones that was saved. It's a real nice uncirculated specimen. Most expert numismatists consider the 1909 O quarter as one of the most important rarities in the Barber series. Dealer and author David Lawrence took a deep dive on this subject with his 1994 book, The Complete Guide to Barber Quarters, and had this to say in 1997. The 1909 O is the scarcest of all the New Orleans Mint Barber quarters in most grades, especially if with a decent strike. It is on the want list of just about everyone who wants to build a mint state set. Well, it's also on the want list of a lot of collectors, not just those going for a mint state set of Barber quarters. In reality, it's one of the greatest rarities of the 20th century. How do we know this? Well, let's look at some value trend charts finally, shall we? I hope you're not getting impatient with me. Alrighty, here we go. This is the homepage for rarecoins101.com. When you see my smiling face, you know you've made it to the right place. And I'm just a harmless little fuzzball, I assure you of that. To get to the value trend charts for the 1909 O quarter, you go to the menu at the top of the page and find the link to the key date coin list and click. So right there's the link we're looking for and click. And this is the city, Los Angeles, California. Oh, sorry. I'm still thinking about that Dragnet rerun from last night. Sorry about that. No, this is the key date coin list page. And this page here is the gateway to all the key date value trend charts on this site. It also details how the coins that made it onto the list were filtered out from the many thousands of collectible U.S. coins. We're not going to get into any of that right now, but because we want to go directly down to the key date coin list. So let's click this link right here, and it'll take us down to where the key date coin list starts. All right. So the key date coin list is actually broken up into 4 groups based on their percentage gain performance over the last 35 years. The first group is what's called the good group, and it's the biggest group of all. And these coins have all demonstrated really nice value trends over time, and they're associated with this lighter green color. Going down even further, we have the better group, and they're called the better group because they've actually done a little bit better than the green group, and they're associated with this darker green color. Going down even further is the best group, and I'm sure you're catching on to how this works. So I don't need to explain just exactly what this group is for or what's in it, but it is the smallest group of all. And then there is the classic rarities group. Now these are coins that have been popular with collectors for generations, but price trends over the last decade or two just haven't been the greatest. So they kind of got booted out of the green groups, but because they are so important to coin collecting and have the potential to rebound strongly in value as they have done in the past, we've created this classic rarities group for them. Now, it so happens that the 1909 Barber quarter belongs to the best group. Yes, it does. And you're about to see why. So each coin that's in the key date coin list that's on this page is linked to a dedicated page where it goes into value trend charts and history and so forth. So let's find the 1909 Barber quarter, and right here it is, right there. So let's give it a click. And it takes us to a page that's dedicated to the 1909 Barber quarter. Now, it starts out with the story behind the coin, explaining why it's relatively rare and desired by collectors. We went through that on the video, so we'll go straight down to the charts. There we go. There's a picture of a 1909 Barber quarter. And this chart you see right here goes back 35 years, and for this coin, the 1909 quarter, in fine condition. In 1990, it was valued, retail estimated value was $38.50. In 2025, well, that's gone up all the way to $575. Now, it was kind of flat until about the mid 1990s, and then it took off, and it really hasn't slowed down since. Now, a lot of some writers in various numismatic circulars, they contend that the 1909 quarter took off in popularity as a result of the book that David Lawrence published in 1995, and we talked about that in the video. And that may very well be true. That's what happened. So, but there's been no collapse in pricing, which is a very good indicator of these strong value trends, and that they're based on bedrock numismatic principles and not some type of flash in the pan. So this is what the first chart you see here is for fine 12, and then the trend line slope. That's very important. And I'll just say this: the bigger the number and the steeper the slope, the better the coin has done. So in fine condition, we got a trend line slope of 48.04. In very fine condition, we see the numbers for the quarter. It was over the same period of time for fine condition, and then you've got the extremely fine and the AU, and then the MS60. And then there's a little chart here that breaks it down by condition, that you can see how the coins have how the coin has done in the various conditions over this 35-year period. And then there's I guess you could say, a bonus section here, a bonus chart that shows the value trends of the quarter from 1950 to 1990. And if you just follow one of these through, let's say you pick the very fine, that would be in the red one there. It says $9. And then that was 1950. You could buy a 1909 quarter in very fine condition for about $9. And then 1955, it jumped up to 45, and then 55, they're going every 5 years. Another 55 was flat from 1960 to 65, and actually went down in 1970 to 45, and then back up to 50, 55, 65, and 95. So that's just a look going way back to see how it has done basically for about the last 75 years or so. All right, so going back to this chart here. Now, the trend line average you see here is simply the average of the trend line slopes of all the conditions that are charted. And it for the 1909-0, it has a trend line average of 37.65. And let me tell you, anything above 13 is pretty darn good. And so this is way above that. So this how it got into the best group. The trend line average is what is used to determine which group the coin gets placed into. So this is way, way above average. Just smokes the rest of the field, pretty much so, of U.S. collectible coins. All right, if you want to see just how this coin compares to a key date, this is a key date, how it compares to a common date of the same type, there's a deal where you can check it here. So just click this, compared to common date coin of same type. So this will take us to this 1906 Barber quarter is a common date in Barber quarter series. And what's its trend line average is 2.08. So key dates typically do so much better in trend line averages compared to common dates of the same type. So, okay, oops, get rid of this, sorry about that. That's an overview of the charts of the 1909-0 quarter. And you can see now why it's such a fabulous coin with all kinds of potential for continued future success. I would say so. The 1909-0 quarter was underrated for a long time. The track record from the coin from 1950 to 1990 was good, but not great. Starting around the mid-1990s, prices catapulted and have remained high. Some scholars contend it was the publication of Lawrence's book in the mid-1990s that initiated the surge in pricing by drawing attention to the rarity and historical significance of the 1909-0 quarter as the last of the New Orleans mint coinage. Perhaps the two events were coincidental, but I don't think so, because values have never stopped moving higher, clearly indicating solid and sustainable numismatic interest, and this is good news for the lucky owners of the 1909-0 quarter. One more thing before leaving the charts. Despite the strong value trends for the 1909-0 quarter over the last 30 years, you can still purchase a well-worn example for under $1,000. Now this one right here, with a grade of very good, it can be had for less than $500. Now, I know that's a lot of money for many of us, but if you look at the key date coin list, darn, so many of them are unaffordable to average collectors and are nothing but a pipe dream for most of us. However, with the 1909-0 quarter, even collectors of ordinary means, if you budget carefully, you could end up owning one of these fantastic coins. During its storied, sometimes raucous existence, the New Orleans Mint has served many purposes: coining facility, military headquarters, assay office, federal prison, warehouse, and museum. Certainly, there must have been occasions where Demolishing the old building was a temptation. Thank goodness Andrew Jackson's sponsored project survived the wrecking ball mentality and now, in our modern age, is a vibrant link to America's numismatic and historical legacy. Some of the finest examples in United States coin collecting came from the New Orleans Mint. Coins like the 1854 O and the 1856 O double eagles can easily fetch more than $100,000. The 1909 O Barber quarter, well, it's not as famous or as rare or as valuable as the two coins I just mentioned, but it too has an impressive value trend record. But that's not all. The 1909 O quarter has a special place in the hearts and minds of so many collectors because it was struck during the final year of minting operations at the New Orleans Mint. It's the last of its kind, sort of like the ultimate artifact from a bygone era. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate your time. If you got something out of this video and thought it was worthwhile, please do me a small favor and click the like button. Yeah, that'll help me out. Now, I think I must be doing something right with these videos because a relatively high percentage of viewers do click the like button, and I'm happy to say virtually no one has clicked the dislike button, so that's a good thing. And many viewers are also hitting the subscribe button. That really does help me to stay motivated. In a few weeks, I hope a few weeks, I'll be posting another video. You can count on that. Okay, until next time, this is Dan the Rare Coin Man signing off. Happy collecting.